4 behaviors or ways of being that absolutely destroy relationships, and 4 ways to actually combat, cope, or deal with those behaviors. We're going to go through this top to bottom, and I will list them off as we go down the line. I think you know who the 4 horsemen are that destroy relationships, and the idea is that we're going to flip it at the end. So there's a little bit of a reveal at the end of this video. It may be a little bit exhaustive, that's okay. However, the first step is understanding and being aware of these elements of behavior or these ways of being. And a lot of times these ways of being or these behaviors are passed down to us from people that felt those behaviors worked for them. And nothing wrong with that. If somebody feels that it worked for them and then they pass it down to you, it may be by means of example, it might be by means of abuse, it might be by means of just informing you that this is the way. And I'd say that there's nothing wrong about it, but there's something to be aware about it. There's definitely a reason to be aware. And if you're not aware, then you can't really, there's no way to transmute anything. There's no way to change anything if you're not aware of it. So if you don't know what you don't know, and it just keeps happening, you're gonna be stuck in a loop. It's just gonna keep going and keep happening. And this happens to not only romantic relationships, but also to familial relationships and also to friendships. And I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to be aware of these at a baseline, dog, at a baseline. And without further ado, the first element of behavior that is going to absolutely corrode or destroy a relationship is criticism. And we have a few definitions here that are off the internet that will just explain to you what it is. And criticism, I think we all have an idea of what it is. When we are with a partner and we're being hypercritical, the idea is that you're basically criticizing their being, and in doing that, it's not creating a platform for essentially anybody to grow from. It's just saying, well, I think that looks stupid. And so it's immediately just offering critique where maybe nobody asked for it. And we learned this we learned this in theater class in college, was instead of offering I wouldn't even say offering, instead of just boom, putting criticism on something, we would ask a question. Oh, well, what was the choice? Why did you make that creative choice? What was that all about? Oh, okay. And what would it have looked like if you had done it this way? So instead of ultimately just slapping critique upon somebody, one that isn't even in a theater class, not even asking for it. It's just, you're just out there being in life, and then all of a sudden just, you offer up some critique. And I understand that this can happen when, a couple is going out and it's like, ooh, I don't like those socks. Or somebody, wait for it, somebody may say, which one works? This one or this one, A or B? And you're like, oh, that one. And when you get into the mode or a pattern or the comfort of a relationship, you learn how to navigate those conversations a lot softer. We talk about this in therapy all the time, being soft with people that you are close to. And I know that it's very common for people that are close to us to be extremely rigid, or to not be soft at all, to be very critical of us. And I'll say this with just a short story, as we usually do. I was on stage with a guitar player, and he had muffed a riff he was supposed to play. And I came to him afterwards and I said, hey, you messed it up. And he said, I know. And nobody on stage knows more than me. And the next time that happens, I need you to know that I know. And it's only gonna make it worse if you come to me like this. Just ask me a question. Just there's no need to immediately just after the show is done. And that resonated with me so heavily that I've remembered it over 10 years today. And yeah, we're all in a relationship on stage. We totally are. And being soft with one another is only going to make the creative process better. It's only going to make your relationship better. So criticism, that is the first of the 4 horsemen. And that one is actually kind of tricky because you don't really know when criticism is afoot sometimes. And you're just like, oh, I think I'm just being helpful or supportive. And it's like, no, you're being critical, and you can be a little softer with it, and you could probably ask a question. That is not the full-on solution. We're going to get into that in like a different video after this. But I just want to give you the immediate means of coping with it, so you're not just stuck there. I'm not just giving you the actual, like, these are the problems. The second one, and this one is extremely important, is contempt. And the definition of contempt is, the definition of contempt that I got from the intranet is when you assume moral superiority over someone else. It's being mean with the intention of being mean. In the example that it gives, you're tired? Cry me a river. I've been with the kids all day. And so this is where it's not even critique, it's just slander. You're just talking ass about your partner here. And it's not really doing. This is when you're in battle mode. And we talked about this in the past video, those closest to you can hurt you the most. And there are people with a possible mental illness, people who have a trauma response, that going to contempt is the first weapon. And the first weapon of defense, or the first weapon of choice, or the first weapon of just feeling that there's some type of temperature elevating, and all of a sudden, and I can't tell you how many times I work with kids where, their first choice was, contempt, because I don't want to get hurt, so I have to hurt this person first. And folks will try to get ahead of the pain game, and they'll essentially try to tear down somebody else before they feel torn down. And in doing that, it really devoids the entire connection of any trust. Because when you tear somebody down in a relationship, how can I trust you to not tear me down in the next situation? Well, what is it that's going to happen next where you're going to just freak out or and start talking S again? Like, what's to stop you then? Or it goes the other way and it says, oh my goodness, what did I do for this person to get so angry and mean with me? I should really check my behavior. I should really edit myself. I should, then you start to like robot your behavior forward, and you're not your authentic self. So it really takes away, it strips the authenticity of the relationship. And I understand that certain relationships they aren't really, people say you're not really a relationship until you've had a fight, or you don't really know somebody until you've had a fight. I remember that in The Matrix. However, I don't think it's necessary to have contempt involved. And contempt, when we talk about it in the English language, other languages, there's like, you are being this. Whereas in the English language, it's just, you are this. And so contempt is condemning somebody's entire character. It's saying that you are dumb, as opposed to you are being dumb. And contempt, like dealing in like just condemning of somebody's entire being, is so dangerous because linguistically it doesn't, there's no room for it to come back. It's just saying this person is that. And when you seek to ultimately annihilate somebody's character, again, I don't know where there's any room for the trust in that situation. It's incumbent upon the person that has taken the act of contempt to look inside themselves and find out, why did they go there? Why did you go there? Why was that the first tool? And once you start to figure that out, and that's at the end of this video, I slightly gave a little bit of reveal of the twist at the end, is that you can then understand that it ain't about your partner. It is not about your partner. It's not about the person you were talking to. It's not about your family member, your coworker, your bandmate. It's about you. This is about you. People that throw out contempt, that is solely about them. There was this, Simon Sinek said, if he was saying at his workplace, if anybody responds more than a 5, if anybody has a reaction that's above a 5, between 0 and 10, then it's not about the actual situation. There's something going on with that person. I would venture further to say if it's over a 4, but that's just me. And I think that contempt is such a quick and easy and convenient tool, yet it is so diabolically tough to do the work to figure out where that tool comes from. And some people may know right off the bat, and even though you know what you know, you may not do what you need to do. So there's a lot of work in unraveling contempt and why you're using it in a potential relationship. All right, the third horseman, defensiveness. Now, defensiveness can come in the form of contempt. Contempt can be a form of defensiveness. These can, overlap. Off the internet, this is defined as, this can often be a counter to the criticism. This can be a counter to a question as well. This is also a moral high ground defense mechanism. No pun intended. I wrote that actually. That was not the internet. The example from the Gottman Institute. Did you call Betty and Ralph to let them know that we're not coming tonight as you promised this morning? Defensive response. I was just too damn busy today. As a matter of fact, you know just how busy my schedule was. Why didn't you just do it? So there's a little bit of Darvo there as well, deflect and reverse victim order. So you see that defensiveness is also an entire, I want to say, the game they play. It's an entire racquetball wall of accountability. I'm just, boom, throwing it right off of there. Or you are the racquetball wall. Like somebody's like trying to like offer up accountability, and it's like, poof, like just goes right back. And so it is an entire mechanism of deflecting accountability, and defensiveness. It definitely, it's a mechanism where being wrong or not looking right is going to deeply wound that person for some reason. And when that person gets down to the core of being wrong isn't condemnation. Being wrong doesn't say your whole being is wrong. That your entire, your existence is wrong. Being wrong in that moment doesn't mean that your partner is right. Defensiveness it's almost exclusively, I would say, committing and creating a zero-sum game. It's saying that we got dubs and L's here, man. I gotta get this person out of here. And I come back to the last video, the person closest to you can hurt you the most. And when we're keeping that in mind, we're always in this high risk factor, this cautionary factor. It's this, oh my goodness, I can't let this happen. I really have to beware. I have to be on my toes. That's when you're entering into, now you're in combat. You're in some type of sparring with your partner, when in reality, this person is probably trying to care for you the most. And so, yes, the people closest to us can hurt us the most, but we can also share the highest joy, the highest vibration, the biggest moments with them. And I had a story for the last video and forgot it, but I'll do it for this one. And that'll be at the end of this. But defensiveness is something that, and anybody watching this video that's known me has known that I probably to the highest regard have committed like multiple acts of defensiveness. Just in the band I was with. I mean, like, no, that wasn't me. Because there was this protection or this idea to protect the ego, because if the ego got hurt, well then everything broke loose, because everything was attached to this ego. Once you let go of that, well then, yeah, maybe I was wrong. Yeah, well let's get back to one, as they say in film. Let's figure out where that slid off the rails. How can we do that? And then now you're building. And the idea of a relationship or any connection is to build from that connection. You build a friendship. You go through things together. You experience life together. You can look back and say, oh man, remember when we did that? Oh man, blah, blah, blah. And then you're able to actually have like a recognition of life together. And that's, you're building. And you can do that when you say you're wrong, when you admit that you're wrong. And so the counteraction to defensiveness is, ta-da, responsibility. And when you take personal responsibility in your life and say, yeah, no, I effed up, I went sideways with that. No other industry that I've known of, that I've worked in, has brought about an element of responsibility more than film. Like, you are on a team, you are on a crew. If your part drops, you know that it was you. But then I've also never been in an industry where it's more supportive than film. Yeah, you messed up. You slept too late. We had to move on. Yeah, you didn't show up to set, or you didn't know the lines. You know, whatever it may be. And it ultimately it will correct you immediately. And so taking responsibility is the only counteract to defensiveness, but the first step you have to take is figure out, what are you protecting? What are you protecting? Then when you let go of that, you can then engage in responsibility. And the final horseman, this one is so practiced, so familiar, so just in a lot of our DNA, and it's stonewalling. And I think a lot of people may not understand what stonewalling is, and it's where we shut down. We just give the silent treatment. We're gone. I don't want you to get stonewalling twisted with healthy boundaries, though. That can be a common mistake. Stonewalling is when you submit no communication. You give no word. You give no explanation as to why you are turning out and turning away. It's just, stonewalling is still to this day an act that I cannot apply words to, like, definitively. And it could be because stonewalling was probably one of the toughest things for me to get over. I thought stonewalling was cool to do. And I thought it was so cool that, I was doing it so often that a friend of mine, they explained to me that at their school, they used to have a word for it. It was called Lone Rangering. So the Lone Ranger at the end of any movie, any Lone Ranger movie, Lone Ranger just walks off, keeps walking, and then the credits roll. And guess what's still happening? The Lone Ranger's still walking, still going away. Guess who doesn't turn back? The Lone Ranger. Like, the Lone Ranger's gone. And so it was the idea of, like, Lone Rangering somebody where you walk away from them, you never look back. I think it's called a country mile. But stonewalling it's extremely manipulative, because you're withholding your presence, or you're withholding communication in a situation, in a relationship, and you're basically causing this other person to suffer while you just give nothing. Now, when I committed to this was like in music stuff. Like, we'd be on the road. We would be stonewalling in a short bus going across the country, not talking to one another, until we had to break it down and be like, dude, I gotta talk to you. You gotta talk to me, man. This is crazy. We gonna do this show or what? Like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's talk. And the other thing that, again, you have to understand, what are you protecting by stonewalling? What is happening there? And you really have to break down what is going on that you cannot, be present or even communicate with this person. At a bare minimum, somebody can tell somebody else in a relationship, I need to take a beat. I'm gonna take a walk around the block. I'm gonna talk to you when I feel like it, when I can do it. One thing that I've seen other people do in relationships is say, if we have like a disagreement or like some type of fight, and we walk away from each other, I commit to not letting 24 hours pass before I contact you again. Like, I won't let that happen, won't let that go by. Because you see relationships where somebody's like, I can't take it, and the other person's like, I can't take it either. And then they go away. And then there's this wild mystery between them on, when are we gonna talk? I don't know. And we got nothing in place to make it come back together. So I thought you were gonna go away. And so you have this situation where people are entirely devoid of the frame of their own relationship. Stonewalling also in its how do I say this? In its function Stonewalling goes both ways. You are stonewalling yourself. And people don't understand this. All 4 of these horsemen, here's the reveal, is that you're doing this to yourself. All of these things you're doing to yourself. I go back to the video I said, one of the meanest things I ever said was to one of my best friends that I love dearly today, and we still hang out, but it was doing it to myself. It wasn't about him, I said it because I felt a certain way about myself and I had to protect something. Again, this is like at a younger age, it doesn't give it a pass, but it gives you context into, knowledge of self. There are some people that know themselves like, before they're even able to drive, legally in the US. But then there's some people you don't get to know yourself until 40 or maybe 50. So you have to understand that all of these things, stonewalling, defensiveness, contempt, criticism, these are all things that when somebody expresses them outwardly, they are projecting it from somewhere inside themselves that they feel that about themselves. Stonewalling for me, whenever I committed it, it was saying, I don't deserve communication or a healthy bond between me and this person. I don't deserve responsibility. I don't deserve a place that doesn't have criticism or critique. I don't deserve a place that doesn't have condemnation. So it's saying that you are only worthy of like emotional warfare. And so that isn't obviously a means to any kind of healthy growth. And so when somebody commits to one of the 4 horsemen, the first step is to understand that if you are in the receiving end of it, this person is going through something awfully painful, or they're committing to pattern behavior that is only destroying their own lives. It's destroying the relationship, yeah, and it's also calling you in to the world of these 4 horsemen. If you take the bait, now you're in it. It was the saying, if you pick a fight with pigs, if you pick a fight with pigs, if you jump in a fight with pigs, you're gonna get mud on yourself too. So it's like, there is a definitive way of going about this where somebody starts committing to one of the 4 horsemen and it's like, okay, all right. Well, I think the first step is to take a beat. And then when you want to come back to the table, I'll be here. I'll absolutely be here at the table. But right now, this is some behavior that I can't necessarily have in my life, or at least right now. But I'm a phone call away. So, and again, do not get stonewalling confused with a healthy boundary. Do not get stonewalling confused with, there was another one I had here. Do not get stonewalled. Yeah, don't get confused with a healthy boundary. And the next video we'll go into is called No Contact, and I think that is like the ultimate healthy boundary, but it's what you're giving yourself. Stonewalling might get twisted or confused as, I'm taking care of myself by not talking to this person, but it's also you're withholding communication. You're holding the relationship hostage. You're holding the communication hostage. You're holding all the useful tools hostage, and then you'll have to pay the ransom. So it at the end of the day, you end up paying the price. And this is essentially, again, the big reveal. All of the 4 horsemen are essentially ways that the person taking the action or committing to the 4 horsemen is how they treat themselves. It's how they treat themselves. And I really can't express that enough. So the first step is the first step. Be aware if somebody's being critical. Be aware if somebody is utilizing contempt, condemnation. Be aware if somebody is weaponizing defensiveness. And be aware if somebody is stonewalling. Because if any of those things are happening, the first step to transmutation, the first step to change, the first step to creating a healing space for it is to acknowledge it. So that's it. I wish you the best of luck. Those are the 4 horsemen. Bye-bye.